Good morning. A little different Sunday morning today. Not used to you guys sitting in rows like this, but that's all right. Thank you for coming today. And if you are a guest, if you were invited with someone, welcome. Glad that you're here. This is a special Sunday because we've got a couple different ministries that we're going to talk about. We have been in the book of Proverbs for several weeks, and we've called this series Wise Up, Making Better Decisions, Living with Fewer Regrets. Because let's be honest, sometimes it's the dumb decisions we make that tend to get us into the difficult predicaments sometimes in our life. And we've addressed all kinds of different topics through the book of Proverbs. We've talked about work, the type of work we do and how we work. We've talked about our words and our speech, and we've talked about our sex lives and money and different things where we tend to, if we make a bad decision, we sometimes live with the consequence of that for years to come. Well, today we're going to wrap up that series, and we are calling it Wisdom in Serving the Poor. Wisdom in Serving the Poor. I've had a heart for the poor since I came to Christ. I was actually semi-homeless right before I came to Christ. I lived in my car for a couple weeks, and I lived in an empty house with no air conditioning, no electricity for about 3 months. Long story, but I felt a tremendous sense of responsibility when I came to Christ, because so many people helped me out in my younger years that it was just important. It's important to not just receive, but also to give. In youth ministry for years, I would take kids down to Elm Street Mission where they would serve the poor dinner, and we made a fun event. I got more kids to come to Elm Street Mission to help the poor than I could to get to go to Great America. There was just that generation, they're all in their 40s now, early 40s, but they just sensed that volunteering, that giving, that serving, it did something for us. And that's true. When we make good decisions for ourselves and how we live the Christian life, it tends to benefit us. And because we're Americans, we don't like to do things unless they benefit us. But we just sang a song about surrendering. That is the hard part. That is the part we don't like to do. But yet, that is the beginning point, and that is what sustains us throughout our journey with God, a continual letting go, a continual surrendering. His will, not mine, be done. Now listen to some of these Proverbs. Again, this goes back 3,000 years. Proverbs, I'll just read them without the address. If you want these, you can always email me and I'll give them to you. Those who oppress the poor insult their maker, but helping the poor honors him. Give freely and become more wealthy. Be stingy and lose everything. If you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord, and he will repay you. Blessed are those who are generous because they feed the poor. A poor person's farm may produce much food, but injustice sweeps it all away. Do not exploit the poor because they are poor, and do not crush the needy in court, for the Lord will take up their case, and he will exact life for life. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered. A righteous person knows the rights of the poor. The wicked does not understand such knowledge. The generous will prosper, and those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. From the beginning of the Bible to the end, you see over and over and over God's heart for the poor and the needy. In fact, Jesus said, there will always be poor among you. Not because that's God's plan, but that's just, he understands reality, the world that we live in, a broken world. When God gave the Israelites the law, one of the things that he said, and this was a commandment, not one of the top 10, but it was one of the most important commandments, as they went into the promised land and they farmed, he told them, do not harvest the edges of your farm. Leave it for the foreigner and for the poor. And here's why that was such a brilliant plan for caring for the poor in a community and in a society. Because landowners were not allowed to maximize their profits. Imagine that. And then secondly, the poor and the needy had to work to get it. It's a beautiful, brilliant plan. You come to the New Testament and the church is just launched, and the poor of the poor, the most vulnerable people in the early church were the widows. And they were flocking to the church, and the church was caring for their needs. But then there became this dispute between the Hellenistic widows, so they had some Greek heritage, and the Jewish widows. And the Jewish widows were getting favored. And so a dispute kind of broke out, and so the disciples said, what are we going to do? They said, let's call on some godly men to oversee and to care and to help these widows, because we need to focus on prayer and the preaching of God's word. The very first council held in Jerusalem that involved Paul and Barnabas and James, the half-brother of Jesus, and Peter, they had this conference because the church was spreading all over the Roman Empire, and they were trying to stay focused on what was most important. Because a church will look different in Jewish culture versus Greek culture. And one of the things they said, they had 4 things that were prominent about how they would conduct themselves around the Roman Empire. And one of them was, don't neglect the poor and the needy. You get into Paul's writings, and he also echoes that sentiment. But interestingly, he distinguishes between widows in need and widows in deed. In other words, there's some widows we should not help. They're young enough, healthy enough, they should work. Paul tells the Thessalonian church, Thessalonica, who kind of thought, well, Jesus is coming any day. And so people started quitting their jobs, waiting for Jesus to come. And he said this, very strong words. Anyone who's not willing to work should not eat. So here's the challenge, and why we need wisdom when it comes to serving the poor. Because some of you are very, very compassionate people. Thank God for you. I'm not one of those. Thank God for people like me. But because here's what we need. We need a healthy balance and tension if we're going to do this well and do it wisely. Someone said, and I'll read it for you here. I quoted it, wrote it down. Compassion without order and accountability leads to chaos. There's no boundaries. There's no accountability, and just anything goes. But order without compassion leads to brutality. And so our goal is to find that sweet spot where compassion, love, and truth and accountability work hand in hand. It's the only way that we can solve the poverty problem anywhere in the world. So we're going to have 2 people come and share today. Louis, come on up first. Louis reached out to me months ago, and he has been working with an organization. I call it a ministry because, like I talked about last week with work, all work is calling by God. All work is ministry if it's done the right way with the right mindset. But he has been working for about a year at an organization called Housing Matters. Okay? If you ever go to Costco, you've seen Housing Matters. It's right there on the corner. And I got to spend some time with him, like an hour talking with him, and then I went and did a tour for 2 hours, and then we had lunch and talked more for about an hour. And my hope is that we can partner in some way with Housing Matters so that we can serve the poor and the needy in our county effectively. Now, I will say this. I don't know anyone that's more cynical than me about the government and the government solving the problems of the world. In fact, a little quick history lesson here. Churches were the only organizations that did this pre-1930s. What was that? Depression, the Great Depression. But it was so overwhelming that the government stepped in to help, and has never let go. And the government tends to be the only organization that when they fail, they get more money. So again, you're not going to find a much more cynical person than me. In the last 4 years, California has spent $17.5 billion on trying to solve this problem. And you know what it's done? It's increased it. So for 2024, it's already slated, I got this on CNN, $20.6 billion for 2024. But in all my cynicism, when I met with Louis, he's the compassionate one. Tears welled up in his eyes as he talked about not only his own personal story, but his heart, his love for people who are down and out and struggling. And not everybody's down and out who struggles. There's down and outers and there's up and outers. Everybody struggles. But it gave me a glimmer of hope that there's an organization in Santa Cruz County that is big enough and significant enough that it can really make a dent in this issue and this problem. So Louis, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at Housing Matters. It's an amazing story.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you all for welcoming me today. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here. Before I start, I'd like to invite each of you to form an image in your mind. What does homelessness look like? What does a person experiencing homelessness look like? And there might even be a smell attached to that image in your mind. And while you think about that, I'll tell you about myself. I came to California about 12 years ago. Came for work, had a temporary job to manage the startup of a business, and it took a year and a half. Well, I'm a Florida boy, but after being here in God's land, and does God live here 12 months out of the year, or just summers? But after spending a year and a half here, I didn't want to go home, right? So I found a way to stay. And I have a background in small business. The way that I found to stay was managing the business and operations of an Episcopal church in Carmel Valley. And I loved it. I had done youth ministry earlier in my career for 13 years, so I knew the church, and I loved the people, cared about the people, cared about the mission and all that. And it really worked out well for quality of life, because while that church could never pay me enough that I could live on my own, I didn't have to. I had a wife, and she also worked for the church. She worked for a different church. But the great thing about this is, while neither of us could make a living enough to live on our own, together we had a very modest old house in Carmel. We could save up and plan. You know, it took intention, it took planning and stewardship of what we had, but we could go on trips. We could have nice things. We had a good life, and we had the same crazy schedule. When we were both busy, Christmas and Easter. You guys get busy at Christmas and Easter?
Somewhat, yeah.
Every once in a while, yeah. We'd both be busy. Then when we had time off, we'd both have time off. So it was great. Right up until the point when she decided that her life would be better if she divorced me and married our very good friend and father figure who lived in a $10 million mansion in Pebble Beach. Her concerns, gone. Me, on the other hand, I became homeless. I became homeless because there was no way I could afford to live. And I stayed with friends, and I house sat, and for about a year and a half, while I never slept outside and I never slept in my car, I can tell you this: it was a stressful experience to not be in control of my own life. And I thank God, and I thank the friends and family that gave me a place. And I'm grateful also that then that led, once I got through the grieving process and the disappointment and the heartbreak of the betrayal that led me to be in that position, And my mom said, okay, I knew I needed to find another job because the church, they wanted to, they just couldn't afford to pay. They couldn't afford to pay enough. My mom said, well, while you're looking for another job, don't forget, make sure that it serves God. So, that's how I came to Santa Cruz, working for Housing Matters, talking to folks like you, ultimately raising money. I mean, that's my title, Director of Fundraising. But it's also telling stories and helping people understand. And so that the ministry that I've been doing my whole life, and thank you for calling it a ministry, Adam, the ministry has just evolved to where I'm now telling the story of God's love for people experiencing homelessness and helping other people see how they might participate in that love, in the love that God has for those people.
I love the image that you had us think of. When we think of a homeless person, we all have that image. For some of us, it conjures up fear, stress, anxiety. I tend to be one, well, what did they do wrong? And they need to take responsibility for themselves, and they just need to get off drugs and take care of themselves, which is horribly cold. In the first service, you gave us a way to look at these people. Share that again. I thought that was brilliant and beautiful.
What did I say?
Let me put it this way. How does God want us to see? What does He want us to see when we see someone that might be on drugs, that might be drunk, that's smoking pot, and you kind of go this way because it's a little nerve-wracking? What does God want us to see when we see a human being?
Well, what are they? What are they? First and foremost, God's children. God's creation. And on the seventh day, God rested, and God said, it is good. And there are people experiencing homelessness who were prodigal. They were prodigal sons or prodigal daughters, and they took whatever they had. Maybe it was a lot, maybe it wasn't, but they took whatever and they squandered it. Well, what did God do with the prodigal son? Arms wide open, can't wait to welcome him back. Kill the fatted calf. Here are my rings. Get some fancy clothes. It doesn't matter to God why you're where you are. And there are plenty. I mean, we see those. It's the people in crisis. It's the people who are passed out on the street, high or drunk. It's the people having a mental crisis, a really bad day, you might say, or maybe a really bad year. Those are often the people that we think of when we think of people experiencing homelessness. But that's the iceberg. That's the tip of the iceberg. There are many more people who, like myself, are the Job. They're cruising along, everything's cool, and then all of a sudden it's not. And so, even for those people, being homeless is an incredibly stressful life. And as I said, it was stressful for me, and I never went without a bed to sleep in. But imagine what it's like. You know, what do any of you do if you have a stressful day? Go home, turn on a comedy, maybe a rom-com, eat your favorite comfort food, a gallon or two of ice cream, I don't know, whatever, you know, no judgment. But you know, you have a way to cope. Well, what if you can't close your eyes at night and sleep because you're afraid you're going to get mugged? What if you can't turn your back because you've been hurt too many times? It's an incredibly stressful life. And so while the percentage of people who are experiencing homelessness, or say they've been experiencing homelessness for a year or more, the percentage of people who have substance abuse problems is high, like 80 to 90%-ish.
Some cities, 95%.
And the percentage of people who have mental health problems is high. Again, 80 to 90%. People who lost housing, like I did, due to divorce or separation, and I don't remember this year's numbers, but last year, the percentage of people in Santa Cruz County who lost housing because of divorce or separation, 9%. Anybody want to throw out a number? What percentage of people lost housing because of drugs and alcohol or mental health? Any guesses? 80%? Anybody else? 30? Getting close. 9. Really good, 10% here. Yeah. It's the same percentage of people who, like me, lost housing because of divorce or separation. But it's that the life is so stressful. And so, how do you look at somebody? Look at them as a child of God. Look at them as your brother or sister. And I'm not going to tell you to, talk to them. I'm not going to tell you to buy them a meal. I'm not going to tell you to go up and shake their hand or give them a hug. That depends on you and what you're comfortable with. Because what I'm comfortable doing is going to depend somewhat on situational awareness, but I'm also a healthy, strong, physically confident man. And whether, my girlfriend Adeline is here, and she could probably kick my butt if she wanted to, but she's still a female, and that makes her more vulnerable in society. So be wise about what you do, but when you look at them, you guys are Christians, pray for them. Say, God bless that person right there. And if you can catch their eye, if you can say, good morning, how are you? Have a great day. Do it. And you know what? Chances are good that they're going to be so delighted that you reached out to them. You saw them, that they're not invisible. They're going to say, oh, thank you very much. You have a great day too. God bless you.
He'll tell you, do what's comfortable. I have to tell you as your pastor, you need to get out of your comfort zone a little. We all do, but be wise about it and how you do it and when you do that and where you do that. But I loved what he said, and this is a challenge for all of us. Whether they're a homeless person or whether they're of that other team politically or that other team religiously or whatever, every person you encounter bears the image of God. And they have value and dignity. And as Christians, even if they persecute us, we are called to love them and treat them with respect and with dignity. But I get why it's so difficult and why some of you might be afraid or cynical like myself. This is too important. I went over the scriptures. I went over the heart of God. He has always had a heart for the poor and the needy. And one of the reasons that we have such a big problem with so many that are suffering, God tends to hold the church responsible, not the government. In fact, I've been reading through Isaiah and Jeremiah, and they're warning them, Babylon's going to come in and destroy you. They're going to take you captive. And they were worshiping false gods and idols, and of course that was horrific. But one of the things that he threw in there as to why he's disciplining them as a nation, and they're going to go under judgment, God's discipline, his loving discipline, by the way, is because they stopped caring for the poor and the needy. And the poor and needy had no justice in that society, and that angered God. So we as a church have to figure out, how are we going to do this well? How are we going to do it with wisdom? One of the most influential books I read years ago was a book called When Helping Hurts. And that's a challenge. I could tell you the numbers. I've thrown a few statistics out there in terms of the money spent, and it's astounding. And there's corruption. Absolutely, there's corruption in the system. But we can't reject it all, because there are people who take advantage of it. There are people who don't take advantage of it. There are people who are corrupt and steal. And some people are honestly motivated not to solve this problem, because if this problem was solved, they wouldn't have a job. So all of that is true. But yet, as believers, followers of Christ, we are called to be involved, to roll up our sleeves, to get out of our comfort zone and do something. So tell us a little bit about Housing Matters and why it's different. And this, I spent 2 hours, so he's only got a couple minutes here. But it's what has given me hope that we could maybe have a partnership in some level, maybe financially, certainly with volunteers, to work with Housing Matters. Why should we do that?
Well, I have to tell you, when I started working at Housing Matters, as I mentioned, I had 13 years experience doing youth ministry. And so, of course, we did a lot of work with people on the margins, other agencies supporting other agencies in big cities from Seattle to Philadelphia to New Orleans and all around. And two things about Housing Matters so impressed me when I started working there. You know, we have a staff of almost 100. From young people, some still in college, who work as our day service coordinators. You know, somebody comes to the door and they need to take a shower. Okay, get your name on the list. From 7 to 3 every day of the week, you can take a shower, get some clean underwear, get some clean socks. And there are people who coordinate this. 24-hour bathrooms, places to charge your phone, all these little things that we can do to begin to build trust. And from those folks up to all the caseworkers, housing navigation specialists, the folks that are experienced and work with veterans, up to the CEO and the janitorial staff and everything in between, they all genuinely care about the people we serve. And I have never for any company, never working for the church, found a group of people that cared so much and were so dedicated to the mission as the people of Housing Matters. And so the other thing that it has so impressed me is that while we make mistakes from time to time, just like we all do, individually or as an organization, we realize there are things we could do better. And you know what? We do it. And so we're always working and striving. And that has led us from when a group of faith-based people and other civically minded folks back in the mid-'80s on that same corner where our campus is saw an encampment of folks and said, you know, we should feed them. And it's like, if you ever remodeled a house, it's like you say, oh, I'm going to change out the baseboards in this room. And you knock the baseboards off, and oh, that doesn't look good. Next thing you know, you're rewiring or replumbing the whole place, right? That's what it has been. Feeding led to shelter, led to what about families in shelter? We need a shelter for families. Led to housing first, which is okay. Yeah, you've got mental health issues. Yeah, you need job training. Yeah, you have a substance abuse problem. Okay, well, let's get you housing because then it's easier to address all these other things. So we shifted to housing first. And now the real bottleneck in our county is housing itself. Because we provide shelter, but not shelter enough, nearly enough for all the people in our community. And shelter is not housing. There are simply not enough houses by a shortfall of more than 6,000 right now. We would need more than 6,000 homes, apartments, houses, whatever, simply to house everybody in our county now. And so Housing Matters started, again, remodeling that house, and you know, the next thing you know, you're changing out everything. We are building housing, permanent, stable, supportive housing, where the most vulnerable, the people, literally, there's a measure that you can do when you start a conversation with folks and determine their likeliness to die. All these different factors to determine how likely you are to die on the street. You know what the life expectancy is for someone living on the street? Age? 50. Good guesses. Yeah, 50. It's a hard, hard life. And so we seek to help and support and partner with, and that's an important thing you helped me remember to say at the other service. What we expect from these folks is not to accept our handout. There are some things that they simply need. Here, let me help you. Let me get you on your feet. But for the folks who are in our program, we partner with them to help them find a solution to their homelessness. And sometimes that takes a lot more work on our part than others. Sometimes it takes case management, talking with the landlord. Look, what can we do? Help keep them in housing. But that's what we do, and that's who we are. And do you want to ask the next question, or should I just go into it about what do you do when you see somebody on the street? Okay, Adam asked this question earlier. And it's a real, I don't know about you guys, but I know we've talked, and it's a real challenge for us, a real catch-22. You see somebody, you want to help. What do? You give them $1? Give them a blanket? What do you do? The challenging reality is, while you want to help, doing that does meet an existential need for them. Unfortunately, it might also disincentivize them from looking for that help with an organization that can help further. It's just a Band-Aid rather than healing the wound. And so, by partnering with an agency like Housing Matters, giving your support, whether that's volunteering or money, advocacy in the community, but partnering with an agency like Housing Matters means that then the help that you want to show an individual can go to that individual or other individuals like them and actually get them on the path back to having their life back.
And that was the thing that pushed me over the edge, that said Housing Matters is in line with biblical values in wanting to help and serve the poor and the needy. I can give someone $1, I can give someone a tent, I can give someone a blanket, but what I'm most likely doing is keeping them there. I love what you said in first service. Sometimes, most people just need to hit rock bottom before they throw up the right white flag, say, I surrender, and I'll get help, real help. So for the sake of time, we're going to stop here because we've got another mission organization that's kind of come up. But Louis is going to hang out for a little bit after the service. Grab them. If you have questions, talk with them. We are hoping to get a team of volunteers. Jeanette, can you throw up the text loop number if people want to join the text loop? I'm going to have you contact me if you want to be part of a team that will go down to Housing Matters and volunteer. And we'll try to figure out a regular time where we can be consistent, because the key is not just the food and the housing and all that, it's love and it's friendship, it's relationship. That means as much as everything else, maybe more sometimes. And so I would love to see our church partner with them, maybe even financially, but for certain with volunteers. And so if you want to be a part of that team, text me, let me know. Here's how you can join the text loop. Let's give Louis a hand for coming and sharing with us today. Thanks, brother. Now, they led worship for us. They were with Kingdom Coffee. A Jesus Mission is the name of the organization. They came all the way out from Oakdale last night. And so welcome Kyle, Tyler, and Kiana. They're going to share a little bit about Kingdom Coffee.
Thanks for having us. I'm always just so glad when I get to come, and whether it's just participate in the service or get to help in some way like worship, it's an honor to be an extended part of this Boulder Creek family. So thank you for having us. So I was here earlier this year, and I got to share with you guys that Kingdom Coffee secured a building for our coffee shop, which is amazing. And we are about... This next week, we should find out if the health department approved our plans. So just give you guys an update on that. It has been a journey with lots of road bumps and delays, but we are glad to be finally moving forward. And the Lord has just shown so much favor We've had almost a whole year of free rent in that building. So it's an incredible, incredible situation that the Lord has for us. So Kingdom Coffee exists not only to bring the gospel to Modesto, it exists to help push forward mission and whether people want to call it social justice or whatever into the globe, all over the globe. So from freeing enslaved Christians in Pakistan, bringing food to the front line in Ukraine, and supporting orphans in Uganda, Kingdom Coffee, through a Jesus mission and through other organizations, our plan is to support those, push those forward, and provide sustainability and consistency so there's never a drop-off in support. So we are here not only to share a little bit about some of those missions that I just mentioned, but also to ask that you'll partner with us. Our goal today is to put some money towards our espresso machine, and I'll mention that again at the end. So we'll go ahead and first start with our a video about the Jinja Children's Home. I have just a short documentary that we just released this last week. And sustainable, consistent support is especially needed in this situation because it's caring for these children. These children have no parents, and we want to provide consistency for them to be able to eat, for them to be able to drink water. And these kids, they are ecstatic about education. And so you'll get to hear a little bit more about that in the video. This is the Jinja Children's Home in Jinja, Uganda. A Jesus Mission has partnered with this orphanage to help spread the gospel through caring and providing for vulnerable children and raising them in the knowledge and love of Jesus. So Kingdom Coffee wants to be a part of partnering with a Jesus Mission and making sure that those kids get the support, whether it's medical bills or whatever comes up. We want to be a part of that solution. Kyle next is going to share about what's going on in Ukraine.
Hello. You might recognize some of us. We were here last year showcasing our Into Ukraine documentary. Pretty much it showcased like how God is working through his church in Ukraine. And on top of that, your pastor was out in Ukraine just not too long ago in July. And he was encouraging and shepherding our team out there. And so I just wanted to give just a quick little update on like what the team is up to. We currently have 5 Jesus Mission missionaries who are serving the locals in Ukraine and the church. The last few months, the team has been consistently delivering water, food, and hygiene products to a circuit of villages in the Zaporizhia region in Ukraine. And if anybody wants to know how that's spelled, you could come find me after the service. And like even some of these villages have recently been liberated from Russian occupant. I can't even say the word right now. Yeah, Kate, whatever. The Russians were there, and they got. They're not there anymore. And so like these are places that there's extreme need. They need aid immediately. And so like even in the last month and a half, the team has delivered 90 tons of supplies. Pretty much what that looks like is like, me and Tyler were talking about it, like 16 Sprinter vans full of supplies. In addition to that, the team has helped other organizations transport medical supplies, different vehicles. They helped out the local church that they're working with dig out a well and septic lines. And even this church trip didn't have like working toilets. And so they were a part of making that a possibility in time for the winter. And even some stuff as unique as putting on like acoustic concerts for, they put on an acoustic concert for the local youth there. So they're very busy and doing a variety of different things. For myself, my wife and I had the privilege of spending most of last year helping with Jesus Mission's Ukraine response team. I just wanted to share just like one of the big things I've learned in my 7 months of being out there. The thing that struck me was like the impression we had on people and the favor that we had, like pretty much through everybody, like through the work that we were doing in Ukraine. Growing up, works were talked about typically only from the context of like, hey, we're not saved by works, but we're saved by faith. But never from the idea of how good works can be used as a tool for evangelism. It was never brought up as an idea in my formation as a Christian. Like through these good works, we found that there was unanimous support from both believers and non-believers, and it gave us a ton of different opportunities, from like speaking to taxi drivers to meeting people in like the local marketplace. Like gave us the opportunity to share about Jesus and our hope in him renewing all things one day. Because of this, I had the dream of coming back and starting this coffee shop. Like, we hope that this coffee shop can be a common ground amongst believers and unbelievers, passionate about helping people in need all around the world, all while discipling both of these groups and having a global perspective and passion for the church and her needs worldwide. And so I'm going to pass the mic off to Tyler, and he'll share a little bit about Pakistan.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So, a Jesus Mission currently has 2 missionaries out in Pakistan. Their names are Sam and him. Right here, that's a picture of that's Sam. Is that him? Yeah. No. But that's Sam. I know that's Sam. The need for the gospel over in Pakistan is urgent. Currently, a Jesus Mission is in the beginning stages of setting up an anti-trafficking fund to rescue and fight slavery over in Pakistan. There is an estimated 4 million persecuted Christians enslaved by wealthy landlords in the country of Pakistan alone. Back in January of this year, a Jesus Mission freed a family of 23 from the suppression seen here and plan to continue to do so. The ministry in Pakistan is the first ministry that Kingdom Coffee will be supporting. With your gift to Kingdom Coffee, you can directly partner with us to help cultivate a culture of generosity and create consistent support to the Pakistan Fund. Imagine a place where Christians and non-Christians alike can meet under one roof to buy a simple cup of coffee to help support such a cause. We at Kingdom Coffee believe that the work of creating authentic relationships and letting our light shine before the world through this generosity will compel thousands of people to look to know Jesus over the years through Kingdom Coffee.
Thanks so much for just letting us share and worship with you guys. It's always an honor. Kingdom Coffee, excuse me, should be opening in the first few months of the new year, so we're really excited about that. Be praying for permits to be approved, all of that. But our financial goal is significant. But we believe that God owns every dollar on this earth. Do you guys believe that? And he called us to take this leap of faith. And so we ask that you join us. So we ask that you would consider being a part of us purchasing our espresso machine. A good one that's going to last is going to be about $15,000. So it's one of our bigger expenses. If you guys have questions, we'll be hanging out after. We're here for the lunch. And thank you again so much for letting us share and take over the service a bit today. Thank you.
So we're going to take communion, and they're going to close in one song, and then I'm going to come up and explain how lunch is going to work. But Kyle, I want to share, what you said about Ukraine reminded me of what James said. James was the half-brother of Jesus, and he was talking about faith, what real faith is. What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but you don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Is that real faith? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye, and have a good day. Stay warm, eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing? What good does that do? See, faith by itself isn't enough unless it produces the good deeds. It is dead and useless. Now, someone may say, some people have faith, others have good deeds, but I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. As we take communion, we're going to do it together. If you didn't get one of these little communion things, raise your hand and someone will bring it to you. But we're going to take it together today. And I just want to give you one thought. Jesus, who existed for all eternity, part of the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. You could argue that he is the wealthiest being in the universe. King of the universe. Became poor. Became impoverished. Took on human flesh. And not only did he walk this earth in human flesh, the Bible says, in his own words, the Son of Man does not even have a place to lay his head. And then he went even further and went to a horrific, vicious, brutal death on the cross. But he did that so that he can make you and I rich in where it really matters the most. And so if you'll grab that cup and take out the little wafer, let's take the wafer together. God, thank you for your body that was broken for us, beaten beyond recognition. We accept this for the forgiveness of our sins. In Jesus' name. And now you can flip it over and open it up for the juice side. And as you take that, be reminded that Jesus said, "This is my blood It is a sign of the new covenant that God has made with us. That if we accept the sacrifice of Jesus for ourselves, he takes on all of our sin. He's punished for our sin. And in return, he gives us all of his blessings, all of his righteousness, all of his goodness. And so take that cup today with a grateful heart. Thank you, Jesus, for dying for us.